Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Um, this is not necessarily a video I wanted to make, but something I felt I needed to get off my chest. There has been a quote that's been floating around the last week or so. I don't remember whatever many days. It's being attributed to someone who has been spoken about in the media recently. Um, the quote is something along the lines of Black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. You have to steal the spot of a white person. This quote is attributed to affirmative action. A person was speaking about affirmative action back when the Supreme Court a couple years ago said that affirmative action was unconstitutional. Um, Basically saying that you had to take the spot of someone who was better qualified than you are in order to because of to get your spot. You couldn't make it on your own. You weren't good enough to make it on your own, so you had to steal the spot of someone better than you. And I wasn't going to address this. I wasn't going to bring it up until I saw people enthusiastically agreeing with this quote. And it got under my skin, and I had to address it. Now, I know I'm not going to convince anybody who agrees with this statement. I just need to say it. So first things first, I do have to make clear that I am not a fan of affirmative action, primarily because I think it is an imperfect solution to a complicated problem. I understand why it's in place. I don't think it should have been declared unconstitutional. It's just one of those things that, like, couldn't you think of a better way to do this kind of thing? I understand the problem exists and what it's trying to do. I just think it's not a great solution, and I don't have an alternative solution to it. So, like I said, it's an unfortunate necessity, I guess you could say, um, for multiple reasons. The fact that it's needed is unfortunate, and the fact that they couldn't find a better solution is also unfortunate. So, about affirmative action and what it addresses. There have been numerous studies. As an example, if you took a white person and a black person and had them send in a resume to a company and apply for a job at a company, they each had the exact same qualifications, the exact same education, background, work experience. The white person will be offered the job like 60 to 80% of the time, and the black person will be offered the job like 10 to 20% of the time. This was tried both with in-person job applications and with mailing in job applications. They would mail in job applications with an obviously bland white-sounding name, and send it to the same company at job applications with a black-sounding name. Results were exactly the same. Black people were being discriminated against in college applications, job applications, promotions, all these things. And there was obvious proof of this. And a great deal of it. These studies were conducted multiple times across multiple states, and it didn't really seem to matter where these studies were being done. The results always came back pretty much the same. White people were being discriminated against, whether deliberately or unconsciously. They never bothered to determine, but people were just not hiring black people and not giving them scholarships or accepting their applications to colleges. There were numerous, things that say they're not being treated fairly in the marketplace of ideas, the marketplace of jobs. They were being dismissed and denied entry. And affirmative action was created to kind of fix that, to make sure that at least some black people were being accepted to college and given and given a fair chance at trying to have a job more important than sweeping the floor. And the problem persists. Even after affirmative action was put in place, people still discriminated. It still occurred. I have an example in my own life. Not that it happened. It happened directly to me. This is a story that was told to me by my wife. This was several years ago, before COVID happened, when my kids were still living at home. My wife went on a business trip to Memphis, Tennessee. I think it was Memphis. It was Tennessee. Could have been Chattanooga. Who knows? Anywho, she went with a bunch of her coworkers. They all flew down to Tennessee because they had a branch office down there. They were doing like some kind of work conference with the multiple offices. And of the group that went, there was one black guy. We'll call him James, because I think that's his name. But anyway, after the day's work and the day's meetings, they went out for drinks after work. My wife sees, James sitting at a table by himself. She looks over, she says, "Hey, James, what's going on?" Sits down with him, starts chatting with him. And he's like, "Look at the waitress." She's like, "What do you mean?" "Watch the waitress." And they sat there, a black man and a white woman, at a table by themselves for 20 minutes. And the waitress never came to their table. The waitress hit every other table in the lounge, got drinks for everybody else except that table where my wife and James sat for 20 minutes. And finally, one of the execs comes over, an older white man, comes to the table and says, "Hey guys, how's it going?" Within 15 seconds, the waitress is at their table. This discrimination happens. And there are other examples. I was watching an interview with Jon Stewart, which was from a couple of years ago when he was still on The Daily Show. The interview was recent, but he was reminiscing about something that had happened while he was on The Daily Show. He was having a discussion about racism and discrimination with one of his black coworkers. And they accused Jon Stewart of discrimination. Guys, he was like, "What do you mean? I am the most liberal, least discriminatory person you would know." And the guy says, "Look at your writing room." And Jon Stewart was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" "Oh, because his writing staff was entirely white men." And to describe what happened here, this is not Jon Stewart being discriminatory and not hiring black people. This is when we have a television show. They basically send out a call. It's like, "Hey, I need a bunch of comedy writers," and then agencies will send people to the show. And all that ever got sent to, when the agencies didn't send women or minorities to Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, they just sent white men to The Daily Show. And Jon Stewart's comments were that you can't just work on your own discrimination. You have to actively work to counteract other people's discrimination. And that's what affirmative action is for. Affirmative action exists to counteract other people's discrimination. It's to make sure that other people have a voice and a seat at the table. Affirmative action does not steal the places of more deserving white people. Affirmative action exists to make sure that qualified black people are not denied a seat at the table, to make sure that they're not discriminated against and they are not pushed aside. Prove me wrong. Good hunting.